Friends, colleagues, and listeners, here we are again, another weekend show with Mr. Dickson. Stevie, crazy thing, mate. Apart from a few more grey hairs, I'm just looking into the screen. I'm thinking to myself, have we actually moved forward from the same time last year?
Well, last week's show we coined deja vu, didn't we? I think this week we'll call it back to the future.
Crazy, Steve, isn't it?
Well, at this time last year, I remember, I think this week, was the first vaccination shot was given to that lady down in Bristol or in the West Country, I remember.
Yeah.
This morning, I've been for my booster, Chris. You'll be pleased to see I'm now fully boosted with my Pfizer booster. This time I had AstraZeneca twice before. Now I'm onto the Pfizer. It's a little cocktail of drugs being injected into my body, but doing my bit for society and keeping people safe. So I think we should all get boosted when we get the opportunity. There's no reason that we should not. I think any case that people put forward is generally one of falsehoods and built on false premises, or false premise rather. So in that sense, I think we have moved forward a lot, Chris, because we've got, most of certainly the developed world, the first world, if you like, is well advanced in vaccination boosters now. But I think there's still some major challenges, Omicron being the biggest, but also this vaccine disparity that still exists between the developed world and the developing world. I think there's still a long way to go. When countries like the UK are ordering 115 million vaccines, forward purchasing, and yet kind of countries like that we know so well, countries like the Philippines, are still sort of doing well, but needed a lot of support to get to that point. I think there is a challenge, still a big challenge ahead, particularly now as we go into winter, with flu and sniffles and everything at play that wasn't in play last year, I think, because most people were having COVID, but I think the combination of all of that doesn't look good for our industry, I don't think. So a rough winter ahead, I suspect.
Yeah, no, it's a shame, but it's the logistics in some of the countries that are challenged now. I think there really needs to be a good view on that now, and start making sure that if they do open channels, they can get there effectively and get it done as quickly as possible. But it must be done. And my views, Steve. I would be very, very tougher if it was my way. Just making people do it, because it's crazy now to be opening up. And I think, I don't know what it is, 5-6 million in this country still haven't even been jabbed.
I don't think mandates are the way forward, Chris, for the reasons that we've said before that we won't go into again. But I do every time encourage everybody. It's great at St Thomas's Hospital in London this morning to see such a well-organised process as we've seen before, and it was also good to see that the walk-in queues were significant. And I had people in the queue, still people queuing up for the second, Chris. This wasn't even the booster time, yeah. But so it is comforting to see that the queue is down onto the. If anybody knows that the hospital sits on Westminster Bridge, looking over to Parliament, ironically. But the queues were down onto the embankment, which I think was really, really, really positive. People are still out there getting vaccinated. So if you've not been vaccinated, you must get vaccinated.
And that was a lovely segue, Steve, into something that I sent you this morning.
Westminster.
Yeah. But it just goes to show, doesn't it, for all the good that's being done, look at the amount of focus that's on those stupid incidences that happened when people are supposed to be leading from the front.
Well, one could look at it two ways. I mean, the way leadership starts with oneself. People are generally. It's all about behaviours. I think behaviours and attitude. That the public will relate to, and when they see their leadership blatantly ignoring the rules, if that was went on, if there was a party where there wasn't a party, but not sure if the party will be confirmed or by who was at the party, in any way that might not be described as a party, it's farcical, right? I mean, it's really farcical. I was in the pub the other night, I hastened to add, I visited the public house, the Mason's Arms, Chris, where we've been before.
The mate, all
in
right, yeah.
in
Yeah,
Battersea, and I do like that pub. It's a fabulous pub. It's the warmest pub in London as well. I sit right next to the fireplace, which is fab. But I was saying to some friends, and friends were talking about this, of course, because it was I wouldn't say it was the talk of the pub. It was mentioned in passing. People really, I don't care that much about it. But what we did care about was the fact that actually said the public would give you a pass if you held your hands up and said, we made a mistake. I'm sorry, I'm the Prime Minister, I've made a mistake, this shouldn't have happened, it won't happen again, but you better believe it that heads will roll. The public would have gone, oh, the Prime Minister has stood up, taken ownership for the event, whilst he may or may not have been there. I think he was not present, but he's taken ownership and he's apologised. The public would have forgotten about it the next day. Instead, it's allowed to permeate and get in the way of all the good work that is still being done by government and by the NHS and others in this space, and therefore it becomes not just a topic of the day but the topic of the week, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and to do the man on the street or the lady on the street or the person on the street's normal response to something like that and say, yep, sorry, but it's not going to happen again, and I'm so frustrated and mad, I'm going to make sure things are in place to never let it happen again. I agree with you. And then it would have stopped all this opposition and ranting and raving and whether he should go now or he shouldn't go and how many other parties. It's ridiculous. I don't think people want to hear it either.
No, they don't. It's the man or the lady on the street. There's no alternative, Chris. There's only two genders, so I don't know. The person was alternative you were referring to there. You've been very, very, very 2021, Chris.
It's Christmas. It's Christmas.
But no, Chris, they don't. And look, as I said, it was mentioned in the pub in passing. People are not really that interested in it. But there is a way to try and bury bad headlines, and that is actually just to try and take ownership of your actions, like any good leader should do. I think in whatever business it is that you're in, and in our industry as well. I was having a meeting yesterday about sustainability and environmental considerations, and we're talking about SAF and future fuels, and some airlines have made some commitments in the last couple of weeks around moving to SAF and so on, and I think that's all really interesting. But actually the airlines, as we know, will only do this kicking or screaming, or if there's some economic benefit. But when we're looking at the impact of SAF versus Jet A1 today, the cost delta per ton is north of $1,000. Now, that's massive, Chris. And so, because we're not talking about this at sort of an industry level, and there is no industry leadership in this sense about, moving to sort of supporting these mandates. People will talk about sound bites, but sound bites is not leadership. Sound bites is just to be able to fly the flag and say, yes, I'm a supporter, like you were on the sort of woke agenda there. They are on the green agenda. But they're just really sort of green brushing things. I mean, it's not actual leadership. It will take some conviction and spine and real commitment and conviction across the industry to make that change. And I think that leadership is not about one person, it's about the collective, all of the leaders, ensuring that they're on the pitch, analogy I use at the time, on the pitch, kicking the ball in the same net rather than trying to look for the opposing goals.
Yeah, no, I agree, Stephen. I was with an organisation yesterday, and the CEO, he was saying, we're able to do certain things because thank God we're making some good money, and when you're making good money, you can care. And you can make a difference. And it's down to this people, profit, planet. It's good to be seen to be green, but unless people are making profit, there's very little that's going to help the planet move.
Exactly.
And people can start to do things themselves, which is where it actually starts from. So if you look at all the people that used to separate their household goods, and you think, oh my God, how can you go to that much trouble? But it made them feel better, and then because they felt better, it sort of passed on, and then thankfully lots of people do it now. So there's certain things that can be done from the ground up, and for workers don't see their companies doing things, then they get frustrated, and if their companies aren't making money, they're not going to be able to do it anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I was just laughing there. I wasn't laughing at what you said. I was laughing because my father, my old man, just sent me a text message on WhatsApp, and it's an OXO cube, but it's called Bojo laughing stock rather than beef or chicken stock, which is there. So that's my dad's sense of humour, which I suspect, Chris, he would get on very well with your good self, given the message you sent me earlier this morning.
Yeah. But I still admire him. How he can get up and, with all that sort of vitriolic feedback he's getting and every single thing he seems to do at the moment is going against him.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good.
Terrible. Right, listen, Steve, something that's a little generic issue now, and it's happening in lots of places, and it's happening across industries. Delays, rude staff, congestion, higher charges being brought in for services that are there because they're not able to provide the original service in the required time or to the required standard. We had a lot of kickback now coming after Christmas because things aren't going to be able to be improved before Christmas. And, you look at everything now on the ground. So supply chains, warehouses, especially on the cargo side, the amount of complaints I got this week suggesting why can't you get so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so to come on and give answers as to why I had to wait in a queue for 5 hours, why I'm being charged storage that I shouldn't have to be charged because they can't clear the cargo. The amount of stick I've been getting this week is incredible.
I'm sure you can single-handedly resolve all of those issues, Chris, and give some credence to solving some of them. It's like I get a lot of people to be why were the queues in the airport, or what was this about the immigration queues, or people are fascinated by aviation. I think it's a topic that is of great interest, but no more so than now, as people are being directly affected. Consumers are being directly affected by these delays in the supply chain or in the logistics chains. And I actually one personal example yesterday. I was with a friend for lunch, actually a colleague. We're having a work lunch, so he is also a friend, but it was a working lunch, and he placed an order for an item on a very well known, reputable website or app, shopping app, and he got a message simply saying, "Your item may be lost."
Yeah.
So it said, may be lost. Either it is lost or it isn't lost. There's no may about it. If you don't know where it is, well, it's lost. And that just shows. This is it was Amazon. If you hadn't had guessed, but this is Amazon, who I would say probably is the world's leading expert when it comes to all things logistics from a consumer perspective. I think they do an exceptional job with their fulfillment centres and their ability to deliver on the same day for certainly parts of London where you ordered at 10 o'clock in the morning and it's there at 6 o'clock at night. It's just fantastic. But even Amazon are struggling, and that's just one small anecdotal sort of insight into the extent of the problems that exist. Dubai, still major issues in Dubai with demurrage and or just with storage and also handlers making money off storage charges, Chris, that really when they've got resourcing issues and not able to service the demand, and then the shipper or the forwarder is having to pay storage, that's going to end up affecting the end price for the customer. And so therefore you look at things like inflation and what that does to the broader economy, and so no wonder we've got massive amounts of inflation now, up at 5%. The American economy, highest levels of inflation in 40 years in the US. That's very dangerous. Looking through to next year, from an economics perspective, I think is going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, no, it's going to be tough. And I also had a son of a friend of mine who, there's a few of them, they've got time off, and they went to a recruitment agency and they were placed for a short-term contract, and they were pushed out within a couple of days of signing on, and they were given very little training, Steve, if any. And then when they got to where they were being employed, they were given even less training again. They were shouted at saying, you need to do this and do this and do this. They were given absolutely no training at all. And he said, my God, if that's an industry opportunity to go into, he wouldn't be going in there in a hurry.
Yeah, it's tough. I think, people get employment. It's still tough in general. Trying to find good workers. who will stay the course. And when, there is now sort of this, it used to be a race to the bottom in terms of pay and conditions. Well, it's now a race to the top. I hear stories of people leaving companies for an extra 20 pence, 30 pence an hour. They're because they're essentially now a commodity resource, and they can move around in such a way.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Now, another, should we say, a weakness or an opportunity that seems to always happen at the wrong times, but cyber attacks and cyber security. So many large companies now are being hit. And then you wonder, are they really, really looking at, the best ways of avoiding it inside? And I think that's another shock that's going to start coming next year, because so many organisations have had their IT departments and IT management inbuilt and being in place for several years without actually being up to date with what's happening and how to prevent it.
Yeah.
So I think it's a huge risk as well next year. Terrible. And when you look at what can happen, it's another pandemic in itself if it's not addressed properly.
Well, it's like we said last week, and again, there was some topical debate that we had over working lunch yesterday with one of our colleagues, and it was in relation to that TUI incident that I mentioned last week into Aberdeen, whereby there is now some real conversation within the AOC operator, the AOC holders, certificate holders in the UK, and the regulator about currency and recency and ensuring people are on top of their game. I think that extends beyond a flight crew perspective, Chris, and it touches every other area and aspect of our business, and possibly even more so, whereby we know that flying training and flying recency is actually quite well regulated and documented. I would say it's less the case for areas such as line maintenance or line maintenance engineers, aircraft mechanics engineers, or for ground handling staff, and that's where possibly the focus should be.
Yeah, no, I agree, Steve. I agree. And it's, I'm just looking at some of the headlines, with some of the rate increases, 3 and 4 times that of what it was back in 2019. Yet, I still feel sorry for some of the handling agents who've got all that asset cost on their books and, what they've got to do all the time. And I don't see it shifting across to them as much as it should do with all the work that they're having to do.
Yeah.
But with all that work and then having the staffing levels, the problems, the training, you've got the other knock-on effect then, human factors, incidents, safety issues, people, just not being themselves. There's a real, I was over the airport when it was on Tuesday, and I was just with a guy who wanted to show me something, and you see the way the people are responding, even the way they're walking and they're working, they all look knackered.
Yeah.
They all look absolutely knackered. So when fatigue sets in, it's a dangerous environment.
Yeah, and it's once it does start to set in, it's a bit like a rot or a sort of a dampness in a wall. It takes hold, and very quickly, it's very difficult to get rid of. It's very difficult to because you've got to then sort of manage things more in a more disciplined way, bring in more people probably to allow others to dial down some of the temperature and some of the pressures in that area, and that is a challenge because you need the competence and the experience and the skills of those that you have been hammered on the clock over the last few months, who have picked up a lot of that slack. So I think it is a very, very, very sort of difficult and potentially dangerous cycle of events.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Another news headline. I don't know if you've seen it, Steve. Remember the Malaysian Airlines flight, the MH370? Do you remember that it vanished?
What, 8th of March 2014? Of course, I remember it very well. Yeah.
Yes, my friend, bang on. Well, it looks like they've actually located it.
Yeah, I'm a bit sceptical about this. I saw this is the British guy who's found a different way to sort of plot the
Richard Godfrey, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't I'd watched a few of these sort of documentaries about looking for MH370 and the search for MH370, and there's been a lot of and privately funded searches as well. But I haven't really taken much notice of what this fella said because I was a skeptic. So what's the crux of it?
Well, it's just saying that that it looks like they found the location, and it's in a very mountainous area with deep ravines and a volcano, and the location is where the a university head of oceanography claims is located, and they think now that they're going to have a search. It's so accurate. They think that they're going to have another search now later in 2022, but it's amazing if they do find it.
Well, look, that was I remember that very well, Chris, because that year was a very bad year for Malaysia aviation. If you remember, we had MH370 in March. We then had, I think it was June or July, with MH17, and then in December we had the QZ8501. So Malaysia lost 3 aircraft that year, which was it took its toll on. Well, actually, on me as well. Whilst I was at AirAsia, of course, I was responsible for a lot of the activity surrounding QZ8501, which I think we'd spoken about in my very first podcast. That was kind of a very heartening experience, I guess. But yeah, as a country and as an aviation industry in Malaysia, that was a tough year. So. I think people want, MH17 and QZ8501. We had some level of answers. We had bodies. We had the ability for people to bury their loved ones. But for 370, that never happened, and people never got closure. So if there is the possibility of finding that aircraft, I suspect the bodies are possibly not in very great nick, if they still exist under the ocean. But at least having a hull or a fuselage or something which the relatives can get some level of closure from, I suspect would be helpful. So if it is the case, then great news.
Yeah, no, but it just reflects, our industry, if you look at it, the amount of crisis and the amount of disruptions, it's been incredible, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah, and we're quite resilient. We are quite resilient, but there's only so much resilience some people have. Now, I'm a bit of a Duracell bunny, so I'm happy to go on and on and on. But there are those that would find this, and I completely understand why they would find this current sort of after everything that's gone on over the years. I think this is the most prolonged event that we've had that has resulted in the industry being completely suppressed. And people being demoralised about the future of aviation, so I can well understand why they might be looking for careers elsewhere, Chris. If I could turn my hand to something else, which would probably be veterinary medicine, if I had any choice in the matter, I would. But I bombed out of that path when I decided to be a baggage handler and a pilot.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have got the opportunity now of revisiting and.
Well, maybe I'll end up back at the Dick Vet School, which is the Royal Veterinary College in Edinburgh one of these days. If things go further south in our industry, let's touch wood and hope not, because all those animals out there will probably pray that I'm not a qualified vet. Although I'd love to have been a vet if I was anything else.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, Steve. But and then just look, but as we're ending now, but it's hard to be positive about so much negativity, but you have to be, because there's always the day after today. Even though tomorrow seldom comes the way you wish it would, but there's always blue above the clouds, and especially coming up to this time of the year, it's important that people keep a little bit upbeat, because there'll be another downward dip in January, and we just got to get over this winter period, I think. But please God, things are going to start getting better, so people can start planning properly.
Well, look, this Omicron is probably shaking people's confidence a little bit. But looking at the statistics, and I like to look at the data, not listen to the rhetoric in the Independent or the Guardian or any other scaremongering news outlet, particularly the bloody BBC. It's horrendous recently, but the data doesn't show that Omicron is really having any major effect, Chris, on hospitalizations or deaths. I mean, it hasn't sort of turned the dial. Yes, the cases are increasing, but it's winter as well. People are a bit more sick. Kids are back at school. They've been back at school. There's more socialising going on in the winter months. I mean, big deal. Who cares that the cases are increasing? But fundamentally, are the pressures on the healthcare or the health system increasing? I personally don't see it in the statistics that I've been looking at. I haven't seen deaths actually on a rolling 7 days basis are gone down. That's surely a good thing. People are getting boosted. Now there's talk about AstraZeneca not being effective against Omicron and Pfizer only being 20% effective, but the boosters give you a much better chance. Well, get bloody boosted and go about your life as normal. That doesn't mean that we have vaccine passports, so we put more restrictions in place, because people will not agree. There will be anarchy on the streets if you lock us up again. We will not be locked up. We will not be silenced by incompetent government. What we will be is looking at the facts, and I think people should look at the facts and be sensible and be careful and wear your mask when you're on the public transport on congested spaces and get bloody boosted.
Yeah, I think if it's addressed logically, Steve, which then I still come back to my point of view, as opposed if the options are, you go into lockdown and more restrictions, or you make people who are not vaccinated get vaccinated to the level they should be, then I would push the latter any time. And coming back to the number of cases with Omicron, I heard one of the scientists say it might not be so dramatic, but it's definitely going to hit more people. And if it hits a lots, then there would be an amount that would have to be hospitalised, which over the amounts that we're talking about would put a strain on the NHS, which is yet to be proven. I agree with you, Steve. But the one thing I've got to ask you now, and I know you're you've got very clear views. Why, Stephen, do they not announce those numbers, which you've also just quoted as well? Why do they not announce those numbers with those that have been vaccinated and those that haven't?
Well, it doesn't suit their objective, does it?
Because that
doesn't suit the narrative, Chris. What they want is they want to frighten people into action. They want to frighten people into following their rules, and so having some sensibility about it doesn't help their narrative.
But surely, Steve, the clearest indicator of where the problem is would be if they're saying there's 50,000 or 54,000 new cases, of which 49,000 are with people that haven't been vaccinated or have been vaccinated only once, and those that have died out of the 102 or the 106 average or whatever.
One died that was vaccinated. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. That is the biggest, clearest message that would be up on everybody's screens. And then you'd have to be a certain type to say, well, no, I'm still not going to get vaccinated. That would be the biggest motivator to vaccinate.
I had a fella this morning in front of me after the Pfizer vaccine. You've got to wait 15 minutes after you have the shot in case you keel over, apparently. So we have a sort of you have a waiting area when you go in, a waiting area when you go out. Anyway, the fella that came out after me, the lady said, "Oh, have you been boosted now?" And he said, "Oh yes, but I didn't want it. I only did it for my parents."
Yeah, well, he's a clever lad, isn't he?
Anyway, he was then said, "Okay, sit over there. So wait and start. The clock starts now." Anyway, there are still some people that think that they can safely go about their business without vaccinations and actually without even wearing masks. I'm not particularly a mask fan, but let me tell you, I comply because it's easier to comply than not, and I think that compliance is important. Because if you imagine, here we are, you and I, Chris, having a conversation about leadership and setting the right examples and showing the right behaviours. If one doesn't then comply, you are complicit in setting the wrong behaviours and giving people an excuse for doing their own thing, or not following suit. So I think that's important. But look, let's wait and see what happens. I've seen, of course, Sturgeon in Scotland has scared people now into further measures of lockdown and cancelling parties and no more socialising and events, as she announced yesterday. I mean, an absolute bloody lunatic, that woman. All of the Scots that I've spoken to since then are livid. So I know most of them won't be complying with her rules because you put too many in place and people just say, "Oh, bollocks to you! I'm not listening to you anymore." That's the worst kind of situation we could get to.
Yeah, which again, Steve, is why if they put the actual figures up, all of us know people who say, "I don't want to get vaccinated." Well, then you just say, "Well, don't come around my house," or "I don't want to be seen out with it," or "I don't want to be out with you." It would soon start making them do it. And even when I was on the train, a couple of times this week going into London, and on one of the radio announcements, it was talking about Mayor Khan's actions, where he started off. It was at something like they reckon 20 to 27% uptake of wearing masks. And after they then imposed, I think it was 300 or 400 fines, it then went up to 70%. So, that fear element and that control element will also make people to do things, Steve.
Yeah, I still see. I mean, I was on the tube this morning. I was on the tube yesterday. I see, wide compliance. I mean, I'd say 90% of people are now wearing a mask, Chris, which is good. I see particular groups of people not wearing masks, which is quite interesting, and I'm not sure why they think they are able to sort of avoid wearing masks. But particular groups of people that just don't comply, and it's consistent. Has been over the last few weeks, which is really quite interesting. I think there's either an education issue or there's a conversation that needs to be had in part of these communities that needs to educate people a little bit more about the benefits of following the rules and being compliant. At the risk of I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm just saying that's probably a pragmatic way to say I think there's more community leadership required in some of these particular communities.
Yes, and there's, if everybody got together, as we've always said, that magic word collaboration, that would make such a huge difference. But not everybody, but so many people have got their own agendas. It doesn't work as well as it should. Stephen, I think we've come to the end again, and I think we should just give a message that whilst we're talking and giving our opinions, those that are out there on the front line every day, it's not an easy job whatsoever. And good luck to everybody. And please God, 2022 will be a much better year.
Here's hoping. I look forward to next week, Chris, last show of the year.
Last show, yeah. Let's have a little festive approach to it. So, but my God, Steve, it's gone quickly, hasn't it?
Isn't it? Hasn't it just? Yeah.
Gone quickly.
11th of December.
Have a good week. I hope to see you, and we'll speak again next week. Take care, mate.
Chris. Thanks very much.